It started like any other quiet day on the farm. The sun was shining, the fields were alive with the buzz of summer, and Anna was tending to the animals like she always did. But that peace didn't last long. Out of nowhere, the roar of motorcycle engines broke the calm, and a group of bikers rolled onto the property, their laughter echoing as they made their unwelcome presence known. What began as teasing quickly escalated, leaving Anna feeling cornered and vulnerable. They underestimated her, thinking she was just a farmer's daughter, alone and defenseless. What they didn't know was that her father had a past, a side of him no one dared to provoke. Just as tensions hit a boiling point, the barn doors creaked open, and there he stood. The look in his eyes wasn't fear. It was something much darker. What happened next would change everything. The air grew heavy as Anna's father, John, stepped forward. He wasn't the kind of man who spoke much about his past, but there was something in his presence that made people take a step back. He didn't yell, didn't threaten, he didn't need to. The bikers paused, their bravado flickering as they exchanged uneasy glances. Anna couldn't help but wonder if this moment was tied to the stories she'd overheard growing up. Whispers in town about her father's life before the farm, a life that seemed worlds away from the gentle, hard-working man she knew. The rumors painted a picture of someone fierce and unforgiving, a man who had faced danger and walked away unscathed. The leader of the bikers smirked, trying to keep control of the situation, but his voice lacked confidence. John's steady gaze never wavered, leaving everyone wondering just how far he was willing to go. The bikers weren't ready to back down just yet. Their leader, a burly man named Rick, took a step closer to John, trying to reassert his dominance. "We're just having a little fun," Rick said, his grin forced but defiant. His crew chuckled nervously, though it was clear their confidence was starting to waver. Anna stood frozen, her heart pounding as she watched her father remain calm, his hands resting loosely at his sides. But there was something about the way he carried himself, a quiet, controlled strength that even she hadn't fully understood until now. Rick's attempt to intimidate only made things worse. "You've got no idea who you're dealing with," John finally said, his voice low and steady. There was no anger, no yelling, just a quiet certainty that made Rick hesitate for a moment. Meanwhile, Anna's mind raced. What was her father hiding? And why did Rick suddenly look like he'd seen a ghost? Rick's smirk faltered as John took a step forward, his boots crunching on the gravel. The bikers shifted uneasily, the air around them suddenly charged with something they couldn't quite place. "This is your last chance to leave," John said, his tone still calm but carrying a weight that made it impossible to ignore. Anna watched in silence, torn between fear and curiosity. She had never seen her father like this, so composed, yet so commanding. Rick, determined not to lose face in front of his crew, barked a laugh and motioned to his men. "We're not scared of some old farmer," he said, though his voice lacked the confidence it had moments earlier. John didn't flinch. Instead, he slowly pulled back his shirt sleeve, revealing a faded tattoo on his forearm. Rick's face drained of color, his bravado crumbling. "No way," he muttered under his breath, stepping back instinctively. The rest of the bikers stared at their leader, confused. "What is it?" One of them whispered, but Rick didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on John, now visibly shaken. Anna's breath caught as the tension reached its peak. Whatever her father's secret was, it was clear it had just changed everything. The silence was deafening as Rick continued to stare at the tattoo, his confidence unraveling with each passing second. Anna's mind raced, trying to piece together the significance of it. Her father had never spoken about it, and yet, whatever it meant had turned the tables in an instant. But just as the bikers began to retreat slightly, a new sound cut through the tension, the distant rumble of engines. More motorcycles. Anna's stomach dropped as another group rolled up the driveway, this one much larger and more intimidating. The new arrivals, dressed in matching jackets, parked their bikes in a neat line and dismounted with precision. Rick's reaction was immediate. He froze completely, his tough guy persona dissolving into panic. What are they doing here? He muttered under his breath. The leader of the newcomers stepped forward, his face hardened and unreadable. He locked eyes with John, then nodded. "Long time, John," the man said. The way he spoke wasn't friendly, but it wasn't hostile either. It was something in between, a careful respect born from a shared history. Anna's heart pounded as she realized this wasn't a coincidence. Her father hadn't just scared off Rick and his crew. He'd somehow called for backup. Rick's voice cracked as he tried to explain himself. "We didn't know this was your territory," he stammered, his earlier arrogance gone. But the leader of the newcomers didn't even glance at him. His attention remained on John, as though waiting for a signal. Anna looked at her father, trying to read his expression. For the first time, she saw a flicker of something she hadn't seen before, the weight of a man balancing on the edge of a decision that could change everything. The tension was unbearable as the two men stood facing each other, the air thick with unspoken words. Anna couldn't tear her eyes away from her father, who seemed completely in control, yet somehow heavier, like he was carrying the weight of whatever was about to happen. John finally broke the silence. "Rick and his boys crossed a line," he said, his voice calm but firm. "But we don't need to escalate this. Let them leave and make sure they know they're not welcome here again." The leader of the newcomers raised an eyebrow, but gave a slow nod, his respect for John evident. "You're lucky he's feeling generous," he said, turning to Rick. "Now get out of here before I change my mind." Rick didn't argue. He signaled his crew, and they scrambled to their bikes, their bravado completely shattered. Within seconds, the roar of engines faded into the distance. Anna exhaled, thinking it was finally over, but the leader of the newcomers wasn't done. He turned back to John, a faint smirk on his face. Still the same old John. Always the peacemaker. But one of these days, someone's going to push you too far. John didn't respond, his expression unreadable. The man mounted his bike, motioned to his crew, and they disappeared just as quickly as they'd come. Anna stepped closer to her father, her voice shaking. "Dad, what was all that? Who are you?" John looked at her, the hardness in his eyes softening just a little. "It's not who I am that matters," he said quietly. "It's who I've chosen to be. And that's someone who keeps his family safe, no matter what." But as they turned to head back to the house, Anna noticed something sticking out of the barn door. A small black envelope with no name, just a symbol that matched her father's tattoo. Her blood ran cold as she realized the past he'd tried to leave behind might not be done with him after all. John took the black envelope from the barn door, his expression unreadable as he turned it over in his hands. Anna watched him carefully, her mind spinning with questions. "What does it mean?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. John sighed and tucked the envelope into his jacket. "It's nothing you need to worry about," he said, his tone calm but final. "What matters is that you're safe." As they walked back to the house, the weight of the day lingered in the air. Anna wanted answers, but deep down, she realized some things were better left unsaid. She had seen a side of her father she never expected, someone willing to confront his past to protect the present. That night, as the farm fell silent again, Anna sat on the porch, watching the stars. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing for sure: her father would always stand between her and the darkness, no matter what it cost him.